How are you? Good, thank you. Have those Ngala made any appearance or? Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Not that we picked up on. There was some audio of Ngala somewhere south around Chitwa area. Yeah, I don't know if they seem to be moving up and down this morning. Heard them a couple of times. Okay. Enjoy. Cheers. Right, so you're all familiar with the incredibly fashionable blue ponchos. I'm going to hand one back to Tevs. It's also a way for him to ensure that not only he's covered, but also that the equipment is covered as well. I'm going to try and salvage the situation that's happening here with my reference books by tucking this cover further over. I would prefer not to. There we go, this will work. Pop a water bottle on top of it. Here we go. Sorted. So sandblasting, you were wondering, while Tebs places his poncho on, which animal would be the most susceptible or the most affected by this drought? It's difficult to say. I've mentioned that I think animals like frogs and fish and the reptiles, the chelonians like tortoises, will have been quite severely affected. In terms of mammals, buffalo are very high on the list. The elephants are very grumpy at the moment, but buffalo, I would say, are one of the most affected. They are hugely water-dependent animals. They don't really move in arid areas throughout the country. They are low-felt based. They need to drink once a day. And they're also bulk grazers. So the plant material that's suffering the most at the moment is the grasses, the grass layer. So without that, the buffalo are seriously struggling. I've noticed very skinny warthogs. Elands as well also tend to struggle in sudden changes in climate. So I'm sure all of the animals are currently rejoicing at our drizzle. It's not even mizzle anymore, it's drizzle. And it does mean that Tebs is going to now have to act almost like a windscreen wiper to keep the lens clean. So guys, the two lines that Steph heard calling are around just south of our boundary. So when triple M turns into double M on Annette's property, that is where they are. I've just got an update from one of the Elephant Plains guys. We'll just have to keep patrolling the southern boundary to see if the others decide to come north. This is glorious. I wonder if Steph is rejoicing as well. Now I imagine what the lions are doing at the moment is being tucked under a bush, looking rather miserable. And Desiree, you were wondering how the big cats feel about the rain. I think they're fairly indifferent to it, to be honest. They've grown up their entire lives obviously having to sit through things like thunderstorms and sit in drizzle for 2 weeks at a time. So I think for them it is just par for the course. It doesn't seem to bother them terribly. They might go and seek refuge somewhere underneath a bush, something along those lines, maybe tuck themselves away there. And actually what you'll find is that they move around quite a bit on these rainy days because the temperatures are nice and low, so they're not stressing about finding shade and spending the day sleeping. And then as soon as the rain stops, that is when the real big cat action happens. First of all, when it gets dark, the rain muffles sounds, so their hunting abilities are far more pronounced, and they've got the advantage over the other animal species. Aside from that, it also means that all of their territorial markings have been washed away, or not, if not washed away, then certainly lessened by the effects of the rain. So that means they're out. As soon as the rain stops, you're going to see leopards patrolling, male lions patrolling, all moving through their territory to come and scent mark once again. It's the wondrous thing about rain. Everything's wonderful right now. I'm so happy. You don't realize how much you miss something until it has disappeared for a long time. Just to give you an update as to what Steph is up to. Steph's having some problems with the combination of communicating and broadcasting at the same time. So he's gone wandering back across to DRC. He'll be out in Rusty fairly shortly to supplement our sunrise safari without the sunrise because it's raining, which is glorious. I'm going to take this opportunity to go across the treehouse dam wall while we have it. Because when this wall starts to get muddy, it becomes a very scary process and one that I usually avoid. You start to sort of slip sideways. Come on, don't stop, rain. Keep raining. Just keep raining. Wondering if a kudu would postpone its birth, having chatted a bit, and that's where I'm heading now. I'm going to go see if I can find those pregnant kudu from yesterday. You're wondering if it sensed a predator or smelt a predator close by, if it would postpone the birth. I don't think it has that much control. Once the whole process has started, I don't think it would be able to be honest. I think we seriously overestimate the level of control animals have over the birthing process, but I'm not sure. I don't know enough about when they go into labor. I certainly think that if a pregnant female kudu sensed a predator nearby, she would, depending on the stage of her labor that she was at, I think she would try and move out of the area as quickly as possible, as quickly and as quietly as possible without drawing attention to herself. Jigger's steering wheel is molting in the moisture. I don't know. I'd love to know what degree of control animals have over their birthing process. I mean, we as human beings, essentially, when the baby wants to come, it will come. We can induce labor, but we certainly, towards full term, cannot really do much to prevent the whole process. Not ourselves, not personally, without medical intervention. So it would be fascinating to know how animals experience the entire process of childbirth, obviously not childbirth, but how they experience the process of going into labor. And what is it that helps them time having their babies around the early morning or in the middle of the day? How do they do that? I don't know. Is it instinct? Is it biological? I honestly have no idea. Do a little bit, I think I'm going to do some more research into it when I get home and find out a bit more about it. That's where I'm on my way to now. The other guides are moving south around the properties. Those of them that can traverse those particular areas, they've moved into them to try and have a look and see if they can follow up on those lines that we're calling. And they've told me that they will update me as to their progress. So if those lines start to move north, then we'll get an update and we'll be able to rush back to where we think they might cross. At the moment though, I don't think it's worth spending more time driving up and down the same boundary. Now that we've had a bit of rain, although it's stopping, and I really wish it wouldn't, I wish it would continue. We were wondering how soon after this rain would the grass go green. And as James has said, we're still within the growth season, so it's around February that the growth of the grass and the tree stops, and it will be very quick. If it's enough rain to trigger another fresh growth, the grass blades will start and the shoots will start to go green in the next few days. If you keep watching, you'll be able to see, the wonders about these live safaris is that you'll be able to watch the whole process happen. And in the next 2 or so days, we're going to start to see the first beginnings of those tiny shoots. Watch out, Tebs, I don't want to pierce your ears on a buffalo thorn. The animals, having chatted a bit about the effect of the rain on the cats, the response of most of the other animals is to move into slightly denser bush to stay sheltered away from it. Generally, animals don't stand in the rain unless they absolutely have to. The elephants have moved somewhere into this block on my right. Oh, Djuma Jean. Come back. Why are these Djuma Jeans so shy? Going to land in that marina tree. It's so interesting. They are such shy birds of prey. I don't think I can get a clear view of it. We'll try. So the Djuma Jean is a harrier hawk, is the official name. There we go. You can actually see it on the branch of that marula tree there. Don't fly, don't fly. Teb's having to shuffle around in his many-layered rain cover. There you can see it to the right, Tebs, and down a little bit. It's on that branch, that movement there. Oh, and I actually think it's raiding nests. This could be exciting. It's not often that you get to see a harrier hawk that isn't being mobbed by other birds. So they are notorious nest raiders. They've got double-jointed feet and legs that allow them to bend backwards. And now that he's moved there, can you just see his face and his crest poking out? I think he's looking for nests to raid. That is their speciality. And what that means is that they are... There he goes, look at him. I think he's looking for a hole like a lilac-breasted roller nest site or something similar. As you can imagine, that does not make them the most popular birds out here, and other bird species like fork-tailed drongos will come and mob him and try and peck at his back and fly low and swoop low over him or her to try and send it packing. It's interesting though is that nobody seems to have spotted it yet. See him walking along the branch looking for eggs to steal. They'll also feed on other species, so they'll feed on snakes. They are birds of prey. There you go, exploring a different level. Look at the way that it's moving. It's definitely searching for crevices in this tree, for nest holes that have been left unguarded by the parents. Tucking its head in. There, those long bare legs. Look, nothing there. On to the next level. Still hasn't been spotted. I think this is... oh no, those are swallows, that they won't do anything. I think this is the first time I've seen a harrier hawk in a long time that hasn't been in the process of being harassed by other birds. Now, this is nesting season for most of the bird species, which means they are on very high alert. Oh, that tree's been deemed to be empty, and on to the next one. The temperature's feeling a little bit up and down at the moment. The rain has stopped and now I'm really warm, so jacket comes off again and so it starts to drizzle again. That was too short-lived to really have had any kind of an impact. We might have rejoiced a little bit too soon. Come on, rain. We need to set in properly. Well, that's interesting. I think that harrier hawk is going to continue to raid nests from tree to tree. Very common to see them in marula tree because that's a very common nest site tree. Make our way from that harrier hawk sighting. Macy, who is watching in the Caribbean, Macy, you were watching a documentary on birds that stammer, and you in fact have a stammer yourself, and you were wondering if we have any birds out here that have stammers in South Africa or on Djuma. I'm trying to think. There are birds that do sound like they have a stammer, so something like a very repetitive bird call, like a cisticola or something like that, before it goes into its full call. I've also heard, and it was this one incredible mystery I never solved, so we get lots of birds with a mimicking sound. We also get birds with accents, so birds just like people that come from the same species of bird but that comes from a different area has a slightly different accent and a slightly different tone to the way that they call. And there was one bird that I always encountered that had a very interesting whistle that it seemed to get stuck on. It was like half of a bird call. It would repeat over and over and over again, but never complete the full chagra call. And I think it was a bird that was imitating, but didn't necessarily get the full call out. In terms of other stammering birds, honestly, Macy, not that I know of off the top of my head, but I would not be surprised at all if there are some out here. Oh, here comes the drizzle again. Oh, actually I do know of one. There was a hardy-jar ibis that used to live in my garden as a child, and it very clearly used to, the call didn't flow as well as necessarily the other birds did. It would get stuck in the first half of the call. That's been my one experience with a stammering bird. Harrier hawk is actually one of the smaller raptor species, but definitely one of the most extraordinary looking. But Roy would like to know what our largest raptor is that we get out here, or largest bird of prey. So I must make a distinction there. The largest raptor, so for example eagles, hawks, anything like that, is the martial eagle, with close to a 3-meter wingspan. Absolutely extraordinary big bird, big eagle, capable of, and actually recorded to have, tackled small antelope species as possible prey. Very, very well known for carrying off small monkeys, or even big monkeys, as well as occasionally, and very sadly, people's pet dogs out here. If anyone has a small toy breed, runs a serious risk. And I know I spent a great deal of Lexi's puppyhood scanning the skies to make sure that she wasn't going to be taken by a martial eagle. It was only when she topped out over 20 kilograms that I stopped worrying about it. So, and then the reason I said we need to make that distinction in terms of raptors versus birds of prey, there are a couple of stork species that are much larger, certainly height-wise, than the martial eagle. The biggest of those and the largest bird, carrion bird that we have out here is the marabou stork. And those birds we've seen quite frequently around the dams as they started to dry up. They've now moved on looking for other opportunities. But that is probably the largest meat-eating bird that we get out here. But there's quite a few really big species. There's the huge lappet-faced vulture, a couple of the really large storks. And since we're talking about it, oh no, wrong tree, sorry, wrong tree. It's the next corner. That's the harrier hawk nest is at, the Djuma nest. Here are these kudu. They were here yesterday. That of course does not mean they're going to be here today, but I suspect that they're going to be moving about in very similar areas, particularly those pregnant females. They're trying to hang out around the drainage line, somewhere where they can be safely tucked away if they do start to go into labor. So I suspect they'll be around here somewhere. Just while we come around this corner, up in the V of this Balanites tree, one of the most beautiful trees out here, that bird that we were watching raid nests, that harrier hawk, this is a harrier hawk nest up in this tree. So that messy bundle of sticks, I don't know if it's the same harrier hawk that is the harrier hawk associated with this nest. I'm not sure. It's impossible to tell, although they are territorial, so it could well be. We're very close to where we saw it. I haven't seen any sign of a chick though, and in fact I actually haven't seen the adults sitting on that nest for a while. They were in almost constant attendance. No sign of life just yet. Should be around the time that the eggs are hatching. This could be a very interesting exercise. There's kudu tracks going in here. We spend a lot of time tracking things like lions and leopards and following them from day to day if we can, and getting a better idea of their movements. But we really don't spend all that much time following a group of antelope species for a couple of days. And this could be a very interesting exercise in trying to work out where they've gone. It's certainly the first time I've ever deliberately gone out looking for a specific group of kudu. This is a first in my career. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Hello, you're an unusual find. What are you doing all the way over here, girl? Aww. Being shy. Aww. The female bushbuck. The smallest, also relates to the kudu, the smallest member of the spiral-horned antelope species. Goes bushbuck, nyala, kudu, and then eland in this area. And the bushbuck is probably the one that we see the least. And I'm not sure why that is. I've never seen, although I suppose it's because we're not around river systems and that's their preferred habitat. But I've seen huge herds of Inyala, which like to utilize the same areas as bushbuck, but maybe actually are out competing the bushbuck in their own way, which is why we hardly ever see them. And as far as we know, the reason I said, what are you doing out here to the bushbuck, is because there's a female that lives at DRC, and sometimes at Ingas if we're lucky, and two males, and we can identify those three because we see them so often. Okay, so kudu tracking. If we were kudu, where would we go from yesterday? I've said this is the first in my career. It's the first time I've ever tracked a group of kudu. But Kathy, you're wondering when and where we get our guiding skills from. And Kathy lives in Tennessee, but has found herself paying attention to the wildlife around her and learning quite a lot from watching these drives. Kathy, there's lots of different ways that you can go about training. Certain lodges offer the training course themselves. You can do it on your own privately. You can write the exams and then organize a practical examination as well. Just to get your basic starting point guiding level, you have to be qualified with governmental organizations, and you have to, most people tend to go as well through the Field Guide Association of South Africa. And there's lots of different ways you can go about that. That being said, you learn the most the minute you start working. The minute you start to spend every single day, at least once a day, but usually twice a day, going out into the bush, I would say I learned more, and it's through nobody's fault. The training that I received was absolutely wonderful, but I learned more in my first month of practical guiding than I did. No, you just flew down into the dragon's line. And there are some skills out in the bush, to finish off with Kathy's question. Things like splitting your attention into what you're hearing and what you're seeing and what you're smelling, having that sort of overall inclusive experience. That cannot be taught, and that really only comes with time. Learning to walk through the bush with using your peripheral vision rather than looking down at your feet, because looking down at your feet is actually incredibly dangerous. You need to be looking up ahead of you and in the distance. Learning to drive and being able to scout for tracks ahead so that you can also turn your head and look to the side of you. That's all stuff that just comes with practice. And it also, of course, gets to the point where driving is second nature as well. The 4x4 driving that we do in the Sabi Sands on Djuma is actually relatively easy. You know, it's comparatively flat, not all that rocky, and the roads are nice and well maintained. Because that's not always the case. When you spend a lot of time, it needs to get to the point where moving from first to second gear, or when you need to move from third down to second, needs to be completely instinctive, so that you can stop focusing on that aspect of it and continue on with the other more important aspects of the job. Most importantly, all of the good guides that I have met every guide that I've met that I would consider to be one of the best in the industry, every single one of them has one unifying factor in common, and that is a passion and a love and a fierce curiosity and interest in what they're doing. And if they have that, it doesn't matter where they come from, what background they have, or possibly even what level of experience they have. It's what brings them together as some of the best guides in the world. And really top of that list, or one of the top people on that list, has got to be Mr. Stefan Winterboer, who apparently is back up and running. You'll be thrilled to hear, so I can continue my search for the kudu, and you can have Steph with you for a while.
Right, so myself and Viam, after having a little bit of a traumatic walk in terms of some technical gremlins that crept into the system, have hightailed it back to the DRC and are in Rusty right now, and that's where you've caught us. Now, on Jamie's tracking topic, we've got something very interesting. There's a track that emanated from the bush on my right. I'm going to show you now, or Viam will pan over there and he'll show you this bush. And as you see right here, wait, there we go. Here we've got a tortoise that has come out, tracked, he's walked up to the edge. There he goes, there he goes, there he goes. Come across here. Obviously gets a little bit iffy. There you can see it again. Comes across there. There you can see it again. There he comes up onto the open area, and there's the tortoise. So a little hinged tortoise. Some tracking sequences as it's gone. Isn't that awesome? Tracking that tortoise. Oh, it's been a bit of a rush. Excuse me if I seem a bit distracted and trying to get my bearings. It's one thing doing a guided experience or doing a presenting on a vehicle and trying to get your mind right and going from a car basically, or from foot basically into a car. So it might take me a bit of time to reset myself, but we'll eventually get there, not to worry. Now, as far as I know, Jamie's been trying to follow up on those male lions that we heard this morning, and it seems like both of them are just outside of our traverse area. Now, it's very common to have a traverse area in every single part of Africa that I've ever visited. There's always a boundary, and there always seems to be something on the other side of the boundary, and we always forget that, you know, as often as what there are things on a boundary and on one side of a boundary, they are on our side of the boundary as well. So it seems like this morning we've got some male lions calling from just off of our boundary, and hopefully on a cloudy day like it is today, we get to change that. Now, lions move around a lot on cloudy days, mainly because they don't get as hot. Being 400 and 500 pounds, lions can overheat when it gets too hot and are actually in danger of heat stroke. And you find that lions sleep for up to 16, 17 hours a day on hot summer days. And that's all in an effort just to maintain a constant body temperature and maintain that energy that they need to hunt the way that they do. These explosive bursts of power, which pick up core body temperature very, very quickly. Now let's go down. We're now driving on the main road out towards Gowrie Gate, and I want to go and have a look at Sydney's dam and go and see what has been happening around that water. We've sort of concentrated our efforts in the south of the reserve this morning, with no one really going north, and I'm not hearing any reports over the radio of anyone that's gone north either. And it's usually on days like today that some oddball happens to come across a boundary that no one's expecting it to come. We haven't had a leopard sighting here in about 24 hours, and literally leopard will traverse in and across areas as big as what Djuma is very, very quickly, and you may find that there are 2 or 3, even 4 leopard sightings that we haven't even heard anything about. Tracks that we find crossing back across our boundaries after having been multiple days here. Now, what has been a source of some debate over the last couple of days, or weeks in actual fact, has been when the marulas are going to be ripe. Now, although marula's season sort of spans 2 or 3 months, it's not something that just happens overnight. It definitely allows us... I just noticed something at the base of the tree. It allows us some speculation as to when your favorite marula tree comes into flower. And what I mean by favorite is that each marula tree has a different flavor, slightly different flavor seed or a fruit to what any other tree does, and everyone's taste buds are different. Some presenters or some guides quite enjoy a more tart taste, a soury taste. Others enjoy a sweeter taste. Now, I'm more for the soury taste of the marula. And so as you're driving through the bush, you'll collect different marulas from different trees, and they will almost every year come into fruit at around about the same time. And what's interesting is elephant also have favorite marula trees. Elephant will absolutely travel quite large distances when they know that their favorite marula tree is coming into fruit, and jealously guard it. They will stand around that tree and pick up the majority of the fruit that falls first, and it's actually quite interesting to watch them do that. And then you don't understand how they know that that tree is coming, or how they remember that that tree is coming, until you figure out, until you remind yourself that if I'm able to judge that a tree is coming into fruit on a particular week, then why is it unfeasible that elephant do the same thing? There we go, we've got an elephant talking about that. We've got an elephant standing in the bush right here. It's going to be easy to get to. What I will show you though is his bottom. There we go. That is an elephant's bottom. Looks like a male elephant. Not a very big one. I'm probably expecting him to be at the tail end of a herd. He looks like one of these adolescents that hang around at the back of the herds, always within association of mommy, but never quite in sight. Very similar to how a teenager would be in a shopping center on a Sunday's shopping trip. They must be loving the cloudy weather we've been having the last 48 hours or so. Let's be honest with you, it hasn't really precipitated the rain that we've been wanting and needing and wishing and hoping for. There's 1 or 2 more days of rain forecast before the sun comes out again for a couple of days, and then we can look forward to another gradual increase in temperature. Look how tatty his ears are looking. Now, that could be anything. It's boisterous play. It's also the type of bush that they live in. Elephant will even bite one another's ears and tails during fighting. So it all depends on how he grew up. You can't judge an elephant's age just by looking at his ears. There are many factors that can influence the condition of an elephant's ears. You're judging it by his size, his general appearance, the length of his tusks, the shape of his skull, how much bone is deposited on his skull. All of those factors I'm taking into account when I'm deciding how old he is. And although his ears are looking a bit tatty, he's definitely not a very big elephant. He doesn't have a lot of calcification on his skull. He's got nice tusks, but not exceptionally big tusks. And I would actually have to dart him, and you'd have to open up his mouth and see which set of molar he is on. The molars in elephant come out at intervals. They are molars that don't come like our teeth do from the top, so close to our nose, inside our jawbone, down and up. The molars of an elephant come from the back of their jaw forward, with the oldest molar, or the molar that's been in the mouth the longest, closest to the tusks. They have just 2 molars in their mouth at any one time, 2 in the top, 2 in the bottom, with a set coming in or slotting in from the back and compressing that old tooth against the tusk. And very big molars. You can imagine if you've only got 1 tooth on each side, the molars are about as big as a double fist. So if you had to put your fists together, knuckles to knuckles, you will see that the surface area from the top, if you had to stare now down at your knuckles, that's about as big as an elephant's molar is. It's an enormous tooth. All right, now, because we've been on bushwalk and because we've been rushing to get the camera up so that we can give Jamie a bit of a break, we have a little bit of a battery problem on our bushwalk camera. So if the picture does go black, excuse us, it's not another technical error, it's just the battery on the camera that's reaching the end of its charge, and we're going to change it. So we'll just see. Now we'll carry on going for as long as we can, and we'll probably be linking over to Jamie as soon as she's ready, but we'll carry on going, having a look at this lovely young male elephant busy stuffing that acacia into his face. Acacia is obviously one of the favorite foods of the elephant out here. They've got a very Catholic diet. They eat almost anything. In actual fact, they eat the most diverse plants of anyone, barring white rhino and then kudu behind them. But on that note, we're quickly going to swap through to Jamie. We're going to change the battery, and then we'll catch up with you in a little bit.
I'm going to show you a slightly bedraggled looking magpie shrike, which I'm sure is reveling in the rain, much like woodlands kingfishers were. Oh, hey, he actually turned in response to that. Beautiful birds. You can see why they're called magpies. Oh. Used to be called a long-tailed shrike because of a long tail. A bird that we see fairly commonly, but always for new viewers we encourage you to start keeping a bird list to build up a list of all of the wonderfully magical feathered friends that we see out here. I'm still looking for the kudu. Basically what I'm doing, I'm adopting a technique that I'm not sure how effective it's going to be. I mean, we've tracked kudu herds over days, but I'm sort of working grid patterns around the drainage lines. I figure that will give us our best chance from where we last saw them and the positions that they were moving to, or where they looked like they were moving to. There's a very good chance that they're somewhere around the Mulwati drainage line. So I'm traveling along Central, which cuts straight through the middle. Let's see if they are somewhere around here. And I've noticed, just from observation with behavior of kudu, they're spending a lot of time around the vegetation, around the drainage lines. They usually do, but in the proper summer months when there's actual rainfall, they spread far further afield, and you could easily encounter one in vegetation like this. But recently they've been spending more and more time around the drainage line systems. I did mention that yesterday in terms of the level of nutrition. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update as to my current progress around my kudu search, but Steph is back up, so let's head over to him for now.
Oh, we got the battery changed and you're back with us again, and in the interim the elephant decided that because we weren't giving him enough attention he'd walk into the thickest bush that we have here at Djuma, so we've decided to move on. And we are en route to Sydney's dam so that we can go and see what has been crossing in and out over there. It's a very popular place for animals to cross over at that point, and I think it's because there's a lot happening right there. There's 2 or 3 properties along a fence line there. You've got Simbambili and you've got the Manyeleti. We've also got the Sabi Sands fence that comes in, and all these fences help to channel game, and at Sydney's dam everything opens again. And I think what happens there is you got this net effect of a bunch of channels that all meet in the same place, and so it's quite a good place to go and check for tracks and look for updates on bizarre mornings like this. Back on the elephants, Gail has asked, how does the worn molar of an elephant leave the mouth? And basically, Gail, it gets compressed. The molar coming in compresses the molar against the tusk, and it'll break up into pieces and fall out of the mouth. So it doesn't come out like our tooth does, it gets loose and then it falls out. It does really, but it's more a compression and then it falls out. The tooth is designed to break up into almost like root sockets, where the root fits into the socket. It'll start to crumble on those places and then it'll fall out of the mouth, and the next molar will literally just be ready to slot straight in. Absolutely beautiful morning, to be quite honest. Right early this morning, myself and VM met you at the violet-backed starling's nest that we found yesterday during drive. And although the male and female were flitting around us, I think we were a little bit too close. We were sitting a little bit in the open, a little bit too close. It's amazing. Yesterday with the vehicle, this big Land Rover, it didn't have any effect on them. This morning, the female with a morsel in her mouth didn't want want to come close to the nest. And you know, with birds, it happens this way. They will eventually calm down with us and allow us to view them sort of without restriction, basically. But for now, I think we pushed it a little bit too much, so we left, and they went back to feeding their babies as soon as we created some distance. But back onto why I mentioned that, is that the dawn chorus of birds this morning has sort of lasted much longer than what it normally lasts. And the bush is just filled with bird noises. We've got black-crowned chagras, three-streaked chagras, we've got a bunch of, that we heard just now, hornbills, we've got grey go-away birds, chin-spot batises, a couple of birds, different birds. And as we were sitting at that elephant that we've just viewed, I could hear in the distance and in the bush around me. Lots of elephant tracks on the road. I must say thank you, Ria. You've made a comment on Twitter saying that presenters are like marula trees, and I can only imagine that you're referring to my comment on each tree having its own particular flavor, and how different people like different flavors, and how different viewers will enjoy different styles of presenting. And that's absolutely the case, Ria. It's actually, for me, what makes presenting teams and guiding teams so special, is that you have got so many different personalities and you've got so many different flavors that it really can fit almost every taste and need. When I'm reflecting quite nicely on our presenting team at the moment, between Jamie and Brent and Scott and James, and how different they each are and how special they each are. And yeah, you've hit a nice comment, lovely comment this time of the morning. Thank you. As I'm driving, I'm scanning underneath the bushes. Gecko has asked something about a sighting we just had a little bit earlier on the tortoise that we saw. And what is the difference between a tortoise and turtle? I know that you're probably asking me the question out of America, out of North America somewhere, where you refer to turtles and tortoises as turtles. And I suppose if you were to further define it, this would be a land-based turtle. In South Africa, turtles are referred to marine reptiles. Turtles they live in the surf, the loggerhead turtle and the hawksbill turtle. We call land-based turtles tortoises here, and so when I refer to a tortoise, it's a land-based turtle, and when we refer to turtles in South Africa or on Game Drive, it would be referring to the marine flipped variety of tortoise that live in the sea. Now there's a snakeskin in the branch over there. It just caught my eye as we're scanning through the bush from left to right. We're also looking for things that just catch our eye. And have a look at that. That was something that caught my eye from quite a distance away. It's a snake skin. What's happened is last night, and that is a buffalo thorn tree. It has quite viciously hooked thorns. Last night, a snake, which was in the process of shedding its skin, came into the tree, hooked its skin that was starting to peel off of it onto one of the thorns, and then basically just reversed out of its skin, turning its skin inside out. Very similar to how you take a sock off of your foot. And would be a shiny, fresh snake this morning. Now, it takes a few days for a snake to shed its skin. It doesn't happen overnight. And during this time, between the old skin and the new skin forms this layer of oil. It's like a secretion, which basically pops the old skin off, but also creates a film over the eyes. And what will happen is that snake is quite vulnerable during this time because this milky fluid goes over the scale that goes over the snake's eye and fills it with an opaqueness, which makes it the snake gets very vulnerable. It obviously can't see, it can't see predators, can't hide very well, and it can make dangerous snakes even more dangerous. So you don't want to go near snakes that have that opaque look to their eyes. They're more prone to biting at that particular stage. And for those of us who have kept snakes as little boys, as pets, we always get bitten around about the time our snakes are shedding, and that was one. Now that's quite nice to see. The snake skin won't be used for much. It doesn't have any nutritional value, but you do find birds using snake skins in the construction of their nests. They're quite tough and they're quite pliable even when they are relatively old. I've seen lots of different species of birds carrying around snake skins from one place to another to go and include in their nesting material. Quite an interesting block of bush this between where we were and Sydney's dam. There's lots of thick bush and quite often owls like to frequent these trees. Keeping my eyes peeled for them. Phil has asked a pretty bizarre question, but quite relevant for this time of the year. So good morning to you, Phil. You've asked, do I ever worry about anthrax in the bush? And is it a cause for concern? And Phil, absolutely, I do worry about anthrax in the bush, in particular during the dry periods. And the reason for this is that the anthrax spore is very dense, and quite often it sinks to the bottom of pans and dams, and obviously it gets concentrated as it dries up. And what happens there is that the spores get concentrated as the animals go down and start to churn up the mud, and elephants go and kick up the mud. The spores come out of their suspension in the mud, and animals then ingest that and become particularly susceptible to anthrax. Now you have anthrax outbreaks. We haven't had one this year, so I'm not too concerned this year. But in previous years, I think the last time I was privy to an anthrax outbreak was probably in 2007, where we were finding dead impala every couple of 100 meters down a road. And what happens there is vultures come in, open up the carcasses, and the anthrax spores are in their belly contents, their rumen. In the feeding frenzy, the vultures will get covered in the anthrax spores. They themselves are not susceptible to anthrax. They are vectors for the disease. They don't get affected by it. Then the vultures will go and bath in a pan and wash those spores off. And that's the cycle of how anthrax works. Now, if you come into contact with those spores, if you go rooting around in the tummy contents, or you happen to be in an area where the anthrax spores have been dried out in that tummy contents and a gust of wind blows it in your face, you can absolutely get it here. But it's not something it's not as scary for me as malaria or being bitten in the face by a lion is. So although it's a concern, it's definitely not something that I fret myself too badly about. But it is an interesting topic to talk about because we're in the middle of a drought, and absolutely it's something that we need to take into consideration when we're finding a carcass lying around, or when we start to find some carcasses lying around. Luckily for us, the veterinary department for the Sabi Sands, the consultants, and also in the Kruger National Park is some of the best in the world, and they really get on top of outbreaks like this really, really quickly. And, we have access to some of the best scientific minds in the world right here, right on our doorstep, so not too much of a story. Now, we've come out of the thick bush around Sydney's dam, and although the signal might get a little bit jumpy over here, it's definitely well worth an inspection. Now, sometimes the signal's bad and sometimes it's good, so don't get too concerned if it gets a bit jumpy over the next couple of seconds. We will be out of it relatively quickly. And what I'm looking for is tracks here, tracks of lion. In particular, this is a fairly common area for tracks of lion. I'll be looking at the ground in areas of soft sand. So just like we have in front of us here, we have an area that will hold tracks quite well and make it easier for me to see from a vehicle. Then I'll be scanning the bush over rougher sections, scanning the bush around me, and then looking there's the area there, having another look, moving my wheels over to the one side, and peering over the side of the car in an effort to try and spot some tracks of something that has passed. At the moment, I just see hyena tracks, which is a fairly common occurrence. David has asked, or made a comment at least, and thank you, David. You said that I'm doing a wonderful job. It's always nice to hear that, so thank you very much. And how long have I been doing this work? David, I've been field guiding now in 2016 or 17th year guiding. So I've been doing it for a fairly long time. Generally speaking, field guides are operational between 2 and 5 years. That's the average that a guide guides for, or not really presenters, but field guides or field guide for is 2 to 5 years. There are an exception that do 5 to 10 years, and very few of us have been doing anything longer than 10 years. Actual fact, we were reminiscing the other day amongst a few of my friends and colleagues that between the 5 of us, we probably know of the 50 guides in the country that have been field guiding for longer than 15 years. So it's a pretty close-knit group. We all share and share alike. We all try and help each other as much as what we can. And it's all testimony to the fact that field guiding in its current form in South Africa is relatively new, although a lot of these reserves have been going for close on 40 years right now. Places like Mala Mala and Londolozi and Sabi Sabi have got guiding teams that stretch back at least for the last 37, 38 years. Most of the reserves and most of the growth that we've seen in the industry has happened only since about 1998, 1999, where we saw this explosion of lodges in South Africa. I'd like to believe that it has something to do with the fact that people were celebrating that South Africa was finally a democracy and finally wanted to come and see how beautiful our country was. And what we had this explosion. And so a lot of field guides, myself included, only saw this as a viable career only from there, from 1998, 1999, around about 2000. But still, it tends to be a young man's job, or young woman's job. Telltale sign of a plantigrade footprint. I'll see if VM can get it for you. VM, I'm gonna probably go forward over here. You're gonna get it there. See if VM can get it over the... No, not going to be possible. Sorry, the angle is just a bit too great, but it's a hyena's footprint. It caught my eye because it looked very leopard-like when I went past it, and as I reversed past it again, just saw that it was a hyena. Spotted hyena, one of the most common of the large or the super predators out here. Definitely my favorite. And the reason why I enjoy spotted hyena is they're always animated, they're always doing something. Unlike lion, which are mainly just sleeping. James Richard has asked, are big cats susceptible to anthrax? James, that's actually a very good question and something that I don't actually know the answer to right now. The last time I dealt with any anthrax questions in depth was probably around about 2007, 2008, where I did know a little bit more than I know now. I can't actually answer that question, James. you know, when I get to a point like this, it's always good to refresh my mind, and obviously I like to pitch things at our audience and to our other viewers. For those of you who do have access to information resources, you're welcome to please share the answer to that question with us. You can use the Twitter handle hashtag #SafariLive, or you can email questions@WildEarth.tv, and FC will give me the answer and I will share it with everybody out there. So please feel free to help us out. That way we learn from one another. It's a good question, and I'm sure I'll be able to answer it for you in a couple of minutes there, James. Now we're going to be going into a bit of a signal poor area. I'm going to be picking up the speed a little bit, just so that we can, if we do go into a shaky place, we can go through it quite quick. So I think our signal looks like it's stable and holding, so I can try and attempt to answer this question from Monkey Man in Australia. And although I find your Twitter handle to be quite humorous, Monkey Man, and I'd love to know why you decided on that as a Twitter handle. I'm going to try and answer your question. You said that you know what leopard and lion calls sound like. What does a cheetah call sound like? Now, cheetah are unlike lion and leopard in that their voice boxes are not designed for roaring. They've got a fused voice box, or their larynx is attached, and what that creates is the ability for the cheetah to actually have quite a high-pitched, squeaky noise, almost bird-like in its sound. It's something unlike anything you've ever heard, and quite difficult to actually describe. And the best piece of advice that I could probably give you is to go and see if you can find any footage on YouTube about cheetahs calling or cheetahs roaring, and you'll see that it's this high-pitched chirping noise that they make. They can purr, funnily enough. They can purr. They can also make a growl, but it's got nothing like the volume and the tone of a lion and a leopard. There's just something about lion and leopard growls and roars that is unbelievable. Now I'm busy scanning over here. This is exactly, although this isn't the most aesthetically pleasing the reserve at all, it definitely is a very high traffic part of the reserve, and I'm busy having a look over here to see if we can see any sign of lion activity. There's been a lot of roaring around the property at the moment. We've had lions roaring from the south, lions roaring from the south, from the southeast, lions roaring from virtually every corner except this corner. We've got some elephant that have come across here, buffalo. Lots of hyena tracks coming from the dam. Kyle has asked me a question that I really enjoy asking. How many hyena would it take to force a lion off the kill? Kyle, I have a theory that suggests that because lion and hyena are both considered super predators, and in some areas lion are more dominant than hyena, and in other areas hyena are more dominant than lion. My theory, and this is just based purely on observation that I've seen, is that it's got to do with the weight, the total weight of hyena in that area versus the total weight of lion in that area. And I've found where hyena outweigh lions, that lion are subservient or submissive to hyena, and vice versa. Where you have a lot more lion in an area than you have hyena, then hyena are submissive to lion. In this particular area, there are a lot more lion than what there are hyena, and you find quite often lion are able to drive hyena off of kills. Even male lion will be able to stand their ground against a lot of hyena in this particular area. But in some areas that I've visited, in particular in Tanzania, I'm going to use as an example, there you have a lot of hyenas, a lot more than you have lion. And in every single case that I watched lion and hyena activity, I've seen hyena completely dominate lion. In actual fact, I've seen lions scavenge more from hyena in places like Savuti and places like Tanzania between the Masai Mara and the Serengeti than I have seen them catching their own food. That said, areas that have relatively little lion activity in the Sabi Sands, for whatever reason. At the moment, let me give an example. This area has been bombshelled. We call it bombshelled. It's an affectionate term that we use for what happens to a lion population when there's a big pride takeover like we've had over the last couple of months. And we've had all the lions basically disperse, and there's very little lion activity in this area. Well, there's not little. Lions are moving around a lot, and they're moving around in smaller numbers than what we usually used to. And we're finding these hyena clans are coalescing, they're coming together. And I have seen it in past places I've been lucky enough to work in. I have seen the hyenas start to hunt things as big as buffalo. I once watched a full hyena kill a buffalo. They're very capable of killing their own food. And where you wouldn't think hyena are able to kill something as large as a buffalo, I can say I've seen it with my own eyes. And they, at that point, for around about 3 or 4 months, hyena were killing everything around that camp I was working in. They killed kudu, they were chasing impala around, they were pulling down giraffe calves, they were killing buffalo, everything that you'd expect to see from lions, hyena were doing. But a fly buzzing around my head, and while you see me frantically trying to rid myself from it, we're going to be crossing over to Jamie. She's got an update for you, and myself and Vim will catch up with you in a little bit.
And we've found not our kudu, but another member of the spiral horned antelope family, this gorgeous Nyana bull, who is playing shy. Now I'm going to have to work on your trust here. I found kudu. Unfortunately, they were exceptionally skittish and they dashed off into really thick vegetation. And as most of you know, we're also implementing a policy of absolutely no off-roading unless absolutely necessary. So they were being as shy as this gentleman was. Do I know that it was the same kudu? No. Do I suspect that it was the kudu from yesterday? Yes, I do. I think it was the same group of them, just judging by the area, but I can't say that for certain. And you'll honestly have to just take my word to it, but I would hope that most of you know me well enough by now to know that I would never lie to you. So we did find the kudu, and they moved off into really thick vegetation. And obviously also with them being heavily pregnant, I was not going to stress them out any further. I think the wind and the rain probably made them feel a little bit uncomfortable. Even this bull has been slightly skittish. When I tried to get a nice clear view of him, he immediately moved off behind this bush. But look at him, he is magnificent. Look at those ivory tips on the top of his horns. It's not true ivory, but it's the description given to the slightly pale part of the keratin sheath. that you only see on mature bulls. And the longer that patch or lighter patch on the tips of the horns, the older the bull, the older the male. And he really is a stunning boy in his prime, nibbling away very dexterously between the thorns. Even with the Nyala, you can see how those horns in this particular type of environment or habitat that they live in, you can see how they might be a disadvantage in terms of getting caught in the vegetation around them. And that is why the females don't have them in these particular riverine vegetation species. Hidden in the greenery. And I'm really hoping that once our sunrise safari is finished, we'll actually have more rain for the thirsty earth to actually soak up, because it's stopped for now. And already the temperatures are rising, and it's starting to feel slightly muggy. I'm hoping it's just a brief lull. Our Nyala boy is playing hard to get, or at least hard to see. He's being a little bit camera shy. I still want to see if I can find you one last glimpse of the kudu for the end of our sunrise safari. So I'm going to send you back to Step and continue on my mission.
So you're back with myself and VM on search of something for you on this quite overcast and lovely day. In actual fact, I mean, it's quite cool, and there's a little bit of a breeze blowing. It's blowing some mist into our faces from time to time. There's a little drizzle that's coming through here, and such a contrast to the last couple of days. We have a female kudu. We're just going to swing over there and show her to you. I find them one of the most beautiful antelope, and since you were just watching a Nyala, kudu and Nyala are cousins with one another. They're part of the Tragelaphine antelope. Tragelaphine antelope are these antelope that all look like kudu and Nyala. They have got quite stout bodies. They can be fairly large or medium to large size. They've got stripes on them. Quite often the males have got some horns. This is a female. She's got no horns, but you can see those stripes on her side. The black feet that they've got with the yellow socks. And she's a browser, and that's actually another trait of the Tragelaphines, is their browsers. Now I hear that Jamie has been tracking a female kudu that is about to give birth. This is not that female. She's definitely not that pregnant. Most of these kudus are pregnant, unlike the impala who drop their lambs at the beginning of the season because they like to eat the grass that flushes with the first rains. Kudu give birth after Christmas, and they do that because it takes a while for the leaf load to increase. January, February is when the bush should be at its greenest, and that's when these little baby kudu are getting the most from their mother's milk. It's very expensive from a metabolic point of view to produce milk, and so the kudu first pick up condition after the dry time. Generally speaking, it's not the case this year. We'll generally wait until the first serious rain starts in December, and then they will pick up condition November, December, January, and then have their babies end of Jan, beginning of February. So we can expect a flush of baby kudus to happen, the same as what we had with the impala. It's not quite the same. They don't flood the market, so to say, but all of a sudden you do find a bunch of little kudu calves running around. They're very cute, must be honest. Let's carry on looking for further sign. Something interesting something more interesting to show you. I'm hoping as the sun rises higher in the sky behind the clouds that it's not going to burn these clouds off. It's generally the case here is that if it rains before 7, so the saying goes, sunshine by 11. So let's hope it's not the case today. Alyssa has given us an answer to our anthrax question. I just want to say thank you, Alyssa. So thank you for helping us teach one another. So Alyssa has confirmed that lions can absolutely get anthrax, but what's very interesting in Alyssa's comment is that it's not always fatal. That lions will sometimes die from septicemia or from a protracted sort of illness, a long-time illness, but if they can survive that, they become immune to anthrax. Can you believe that? I suppose it makes a little bit of sense. Predators and scavengers, and lions are definitely both, scavenger and predator, are vectors for the anthrax spore, and without a vector the spore wouldn't be able to be proliferated, wouldn't be able to spread, and so it's not in the best interest of the organism, of the anthrax spore, to actually kill everything that it gets into contact with. So I suppose, Alyssa, to a certain degree it makes sense. Now it's jogging my memory back into function, and I just want to say thank you very much for sharing that with us. And I hope, I can't really remember whose question it was from. I'm sure it was from James, if my memory serves me correctly. And I hope that, James, you're still watching and that answered the question for you. So yes, absolutely, lions can get anthrax. It's not always terminal, and if they can survive it, they're actually immune to it. So, whoa, mind blown. Right, now we are here on Cheetah Plains. It was Russell in Australia that actually asked that question. So Russell, I hope that answered your question. We've got a bird running off into cover as we speak. One for the bird lists, even though VM was quick enough to catch it. There we go. That is a busted. It's not just busted in that we caught it, it's a busted bird. And that is the black-bellied bustard. So for your bird lists of today, that you can tick off the black-bellied bustard, and that can be with the violet-back starling that we had early this morning. Billy Joe in Florida has asked if we've got a new off-road policy because of the drought. And it's funny that you say that. Yes, we do actually have one. We are going to try and limit our off-road driving to what we call just the high-profile animals, which is the big 5: cheetah, wild dog, and hyena. And the reason for this is quite simply in that when you've got limited ground cover that's really battling to recover from a protracted dry spell like we have at the moment, is that if you just drive off-road as you please, you end up with these unsightly tracks into the bush everywhere. And because there's only really so many places you can drive through the bush with one of these cars, quite often you get these tracks turning into 2 tracks, which eventually turn into roads that are not part of the traditional road network here, and as such are not maintained as well. And then when the rains do come, you've got these tracks through the bush that are compacted in areas where there shouldn't be tracks, and it quite often results in quite bad soil erosion. So for those reasons, when it's dry like this, we try and limit our off-road driving to just the high-profile animals, which is the big 5: lion, leopard, elephant, and buffalo, because we don't go off-road for rhino here. And then we also do it for hyena, just 2 hyena dens. We don't follow hyena off-road. Hyena dens, wild dog, and cheetah. That's what we'll be going off-road for. We won't be going off-road for general game or for birds and bird nests that much. And I'm sure you will actually see it if you're a long-term viewer of the show. Jim is speaking of cheetah, are there any around here? Now Jim, yesterday and today I've heard reports on the radio that there are cheetah. There are cheetah in the area, absolutely. They're just not on the spot where I can drive right now. That doesn't mean too much. Cheetah move very big distances and in very short spaces of time. And it could very well be that we have cheetah come onto the property at any moment. I heard last night on the radio, I've heard today on the radio as well, that there are cheetah in the area, so just not where we can take you right now, but as I said, they move quite massive distances, and it's completely feasible for us to think that we get cheetah back in front of you on camera at any day. It's nice to know, actually, it's nice to know they're cheetah here. Now cheetah are not only restricted to big open grassy plains where they can run full speed, but they're quite effective hunters all over the bush. In actual fact, their success rate is almost 3 times that of a leopard, believe it or not, in terms of hunting success, and that would be how many successful hunts are generated per effort. And that cheetah and wild dog share around about a 95% success rate. How's that? And they're some of the rarest animals out here, and they have such a phenomenal success rate. Whereas lion and leopard share around about a 22 to 25% success rate, which is virtually nothing. So only 2 out of every 10 hunts for a lion or a leopard are successful, whereas 9 out of every 10 hunts for a cheetah is successful. The reason why there are not that many cheetah and not that many wild dog is quite simply environmental pressure, and they are being outcompeted by the more adaptable large cats. Only really leopard. Lion are completely restricted to game reserves and wilderness areas only in Africa at the moment. Lion numbers are dwindling very rapidly, probably faster than what wild dog and cheetah numbers are dwindling, if you had to look at it from a percentage point of view, and are absolutely in need of some attention at the moment. There's a very real possibility that our great-grandchildren and grandchildren will not see lion, leopard, or cheetah and wild dog, or not leopard, but cheetah, wild dog, and lion in wilderness areas by the time that they start to visit our national parks in years to come. Not without concerted effort. It felt like this drive has gone by for me like an absolute blink of an eye. We started off this morning on foot. We had a few technical gremlins, myself and VM, then hightailed it through the rain to get to Rusty, and then we've had quite a nice drive so far. A bit of elephant and a bit of general game and a good chat. I must say thank you from VM and myself. We're going to be handing over to Jamie, and Jamie's going to close the show for us. We'll catch you on the Sunset Safari. See you a bit later.
After a promising start, the Lions pulled a sneaky maneuver on us and never quite came those extra couple of 100 meters to pop out north on the Djuma boundary. At some point soon though, there is hope. I'm sure that they are going to be coming through. But at least the promised rain did arrive, and we did actually get to see it. We got to experience as well. Big thank you to Tebs as well as to all of you guys. We'll catch you for the Sunset Safari. Cheers for now.